We are a nation. We who are foundational black Americans are a nation. Now, even in the Bible, the promises to the patriots, to the patriots in the Bible, was land. You can't have a nation without land. Now, there's many nations who's newly minted, relatively. You got the South Sudan, who's recent, not too long ago, broke off from Sudan to become a nation to itself. Then there was Eritrea, who broke off from Ethiopia to become a nation to itself. And then there's Pakistan, who became a nation when it broke off from India. And more specifically, there was Israel, who did not break off to become a nation, but actually invaded Palestine and established itself as a nation, which is kind of unusual. How that they claim a Holocaust in World War II. And World War II just ended in 1945 when America bombed Japan, bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan, that ended the war. Because Japanese did not want to give up. Germany surrendered before that. And this, a side note, is kind of unusual that the two countries that America and the Allies bombed the most, Germany, which is now the richest European country, and Japan, which was, until recently, it still is a very rich country in Asia. But to say that in 1945, the war ended, and in 3 years later, Israel became a nation state. It's as if the Zionists had that plan all along. How could, so soon after the so-called Holocaust, they become a nation in just 3 years like that? Now, before that, the Jews controlled Hollywood. So it's interesting that just after the war, they had two movies, among others, probably. A movie called The Burning Cross, made in 1947, and which was an anti-racist movie, an anti-Ku Klux Klan movie, The Burning Cross. Then they had the movie called Gentleman Agreement, also in 1947, which was against anti-Semites. It's interesting that was just 2 years after the war and a year before they established Israel. Gentleman Agreement, a movie against anti-Semites. And it starred some of the biggest stars in Hollywood. And the biggest director and producer, Elia Kazan. And Gregory Peck was the star. Then he had John Garfield, also in the movie, and Celeste Holmes, among other big name stars in Hollywood that the Jews put up there. And not surprisingly, it won many Oscars in 1948. It won, and that's the same year that Israel was became a country. 1948, in the movie Gentleman Agreement, won many Oscars. Like I think Celeste Holm, she became won for Best Supporting Actress or something like that. And I think he won Best Movies and a lot of Best This and Best That. Jewish made, Jewish finance, bit of propaganda. And it's interesting that Gregory Peck character called Shula, well, his name was Shula Green. Also, I think his name was Phil Green, Shula Green or something like that. Before he changed it to Greenberg in the movie. And he was explaining to his son, Tommy, what anti-Semite is. And after he explained it, and then he said, all of a sudden, he said, some people are mixed up. Now, on first hand, you would think that he's talking about the anti-Semite is mixed up. But it's deeper thought. It's the Jews realizing that they are mixed, a mixed multitude, that they have a small, very tiny percentage of African blood in them, very small, some negligible. That's deep thought, in my estimation, when he made. In the movie, they do it so clandestinely, so subtly, that you have to dig deep and think in an unusual way. Because the words they use most often in books and movies, most often is economical. That is, they don't waste words, and most of it have a meaning. And the plant, they had that plant. They had an agenda in the plant all along. It's like when I was just playing a game of chess against the computer. Now, I thought my king was in a real a predicament. But I thought it out. It looked like I would have lost that chess. But I thought it out. And I came out the winner. And chess is like a metaphor of life. You have the rook who represents business people, the pillar of community, business people. Then you have the knight, who evidently represents the military. Then you have the bishop who always make a slant. They move in a slant. The bishop represented religion. Of course, the knights move in 45-degree angle. The rook move in a square. Then you got the queen, who represent all females, and the king. Then you have the pawn. Now the pawn could transform into any other, the queen, the knight, the bishop, or the rook. They could transform themselves into any other except the king. They cannot become a king. And they cannot capture the king. He could only be checked. That's a metaphor in life. Cannot capture the king. Now, in my estimation, I always use the black side, because it represents the sun. The white, the moon. Now, the black side always is on the defense, of course, and the white is always on the offense. I always use the black side. It's like biblically too. It's like the chess. The chess. I think it was Saul or Esau or both of them. And I know David pursued Saul, but he didn't kill him. He didn't kill him. Just like in chess. He checked him. He checked him. He had to check. He was able to kill him, in a position to kill him, but he didn't. Like in chess game. I think Jacob and Esau are almost similar. Because Esau, red is like the sun at dawn, red and hairy. The hair is like the wave of the sun. And you see, they pictured Jacob in a different part of how from where they picture Esau, because you could put two and two together, and you could easily figure it out. But David and Jacob was small and smooth. They say Jacob was a smooth man, like the moon, without any waves emanated from it. See, and they both, they said they were like twins, the moon and the sun. And you know David was small. So that's that. Of course, Isaac, in a particular context, represented the subconscious mind in context. Jacob's mother represented the conscious mind. And Isaac, his subconscious was blind. But he had to go by feeling. He went by feeling. He had to feel David. So they made David appear to be Esau. So that's a lot of metaphor for your thinking. And some people who call some Hebrew Israelite don't understand. If they understand, they're from Masonic Lodge, and they're misleading the people. Very much so. They are misleading them. So that's the story about Jacob. I don't know how that tied into nationhood. Oh, I say life is like that, like chess. And they, like I said, the king cannot be killed or captured. So like the sun or the moon cannot be killed or captured. They're going to be checked, though. And Beyonce, in her songs, she had one song, I think, named The Black King, or something like that, where she said that a true king can never die. I don't know where she get that information from, but it's like the chess, and it's like the biblical story of Esau and Jacob and Saul and David. Now you say, in Saul, the name Saul, there's a USA, letters USA in it, or a USA, Saul, or SAU. SAU, and then the last letters L. And Esau also, it's a SAU in Esau, or AU, Esau, SAU, or USA. And the first letter is E. In Esau, the first letter is E, and the Saul, the last letter is L. So together E and L is L. El mean Elohim, or the Lord. Or the law. L, or the law. LAW. Or the Lord. But all those is different keys. But as I'm saying, we are a nation of people, and we shall be again. Because when we was captured in Africa, we was captured because we was different. As we, for thousands of years, and we was some of troublemaker too. Because we came not only from Babylon to Egypt, but we fled from Egypt to the west of Africa and to the south of Africa, which is up, going up. Because you say up to now, and down to now. The north is going down. And we established different nations among the other Africans who was not as brilliant as we were. Because we came from what was later called Egypt. Now it wasn't called, it was called names like Kemet or Mizraim, and biblically is Mizraim. It did not have the name of Egypt until the white people, the Persians, the Greeks, the Turks, and those people invaded the land. And so it became Egypt. So they're using semantics when they say the Egyptian was white. That's what was when it was in its decline, and they invaded it after we built it. So they're using semantics. They're using semantics and saying that Egyptian was white. That's after its decline, when we foolishly intermarried with them, the rulers integrated, intermarried with them. Of course, the decline of Egypt led them into our circles, into our religious circles, telling them different secrets. Of course, like him hit in the head. They were hit in the head, not physically, but mentally. Was hit in the head and gave up the secret. There was different names where you could call the name of the name of the sun. Different planets that had names, secret names, and you could actually communicate. That's how far advanced they were, and where their magic lie into the names, like the story of Isaac stealing the name of Ra. Find out what Ra's real name is. And so even in Masonic, is talk about the name, an efferable name. Those are the names. With very few. I mean, most of the Masons do not know it. Because Regan, all those people, the Mason, they died just like anybody else. But there's much more to say. There's, like I say, even talking about the Nation of Islam. They talk about that for 90 years. Of course, a master Mason taught Elijah Muhammad. I do not know if Elijah Muhammad became a Mason after he met Farad, Master Mason, the Master Mason, or before. Because in order to learn some of the secrets, I guess maybe he was told to be made a Mason. Those things that he was taught wasn't in the regular or irregular order. So it says, we as a nation, and we shall become it again. We are the nation. In the nation, we shall be a divine, holy nation, a holy people.